Now it's round 2 to see if North America continue things on. It's going to be a battle over the Panama Canal here as North America goes up against South America to determine who grabs themselves the first points of the day. I'm joined once again at the Analysis Concave by Mr. Tetchy. You've already seen him a little bit.
Hello.
We've already seen Dreadnought over at the other desk. Don't really want to hear from him for now. And then we have Jay House still here next to me, looking tall as always. How you doing, boys? You all good?
I feel welcome.
Yes. Actually, you were more welcomed than those two when I
know,
just did
right?
this. He got the best welcome.
Yeah, he did. He very much did. But, you know, North America managed to get a win over MVP Black last series, so I feel like I got a win too, you know?
We were going crazy in the back with Tempo Storm watching that. It was so cool.
I think everyone was going crazy.
You have no idea, actually, because like how all the players cycle in through the front door and the TV is right there. Legitimately, every player that walked in saw that Tempo or that North America and Korea were playing, and they were just like all eyes. Like
it was L5 and Tempo Storm both watching the game. It was so good.
It was a lot of fun.
Awesome stuff. Well, we're going to be going into Tempo Storm now, going up against RED Canids here in our next series of the day. Gentlemen, Tempo Storm technically took the first place from the North American region over Roll20 that they had found. And Tempo Storm has consistently been, aside from the Western Clash where it was kind of a bit iffy, they have been the very top of America for a long, long time.
Yeah, they have. And there's actually kind of, when looking at the power of Tempo Storm solely when looking at North America, there's this kind of awkward moment because you look at the Western Clash and they actually underperformed under Roll20. But then immediately after, almost week 2, I believe it was, of HGC, Roll20 gets into a slump. They get dominated by Tempo Storm, and then you go, and then Roll20 climbs to the point where they can compete with the Korean team. And so you hit a moment where it's like, how really good is Tempo? Because the only person you feel you can cross-compare them to is Roll20, and it was unfair when we saw them.
That's my biggest question mark. This is the one team that you think should do better. But for whatever reason it is, the minute they get on the big stage, it's like they're good enough to beat all of NA. They lost one series all season. And then it's just like, well, we got to a big stage, that's good enough. There's something missing with this team.
Right.
Like, it's proving ground time now, right? They've been together a year, since last July.
Yeah.
Won everything in North America.
Let's not go too heavy in it for the moment, as obviously there's the other team, which is RED Canids. And to be honest, they have, for the majority, their team has sat atop Latin American scene. For the longest time as well.
They really have. They've been plodding along quite happily in South America, but they've yet to really prove themselves on either Western Clash or global scale yet. However, when we spoke to them, they said that they felt much more comfortable here than they did at Western Clash. They feel really good about their roster. They feel really good about their play. They feel they might be able to take a couple games.
Of course, make sure to do the votes. Get those votes in chat, as you can hashtag which team you want to be victorious going into this one, or who you think is just going to be victorious. But let's now focus a little bit closely on these teams. We're going to start things off with Tempo Storm. So, Dread, you wanted to say something before, and you can go now.
So starting out the gates is that you were talking about there's something missing for Tempo Storm, and I very much agree, but when we got to interview all the teams, one of the highest compliments ever to come out of a Korean team about North America, MVP Sake, which after, you know, the last series is making maybe a bit more sense, but Sake single-handedly just said that this version of Tempo Storm feels like the only North American team to come to a Worlds and intend to play, to win, not to just participate for a very long time. And that level of a compliment to these players, boot camping, this seems like this tournament is a different tone for Tempo Storm.
It's serious time for Tempo Storm. That's how it feels. When we've talked to them, as you said, when we've talked to them, they came here, it was 5 days earlier?
Yeah.
Right? And jet lag, we've all experienced jet lag when it comes to flying from North America to Europe. Hell, Dreadnought's still experiencing it.
I'm right there with you, man. Sweden.
And overall, it can be a nightmare. So they came in early. They practiced over at Inferno Online, etc. One of the great places over in Stockholm, and have really honed down. As you say, a lot of people are giving them respect for that. Jay, how do you think that, as much as you feel that it might be something missing, is this a hungry and different Tempo Storm?
I don't know. I want to say yes.
Yeah.
Here's the thing. You boot camp, you hired a coach, it's now long-standing. You have experience as a roster. There are no more excuses. There's no more like, oh, we need to be more together as a team. We need longer. We need coaching. We need to boot camp. We need this. All those factors are now gone. Yeah. It's now time to put up or shut up. And like right now, that's the point where you're at. They have the talent. This is one of the most talented rosters we've seen for a while. They have it. but now they have to perform.
And there we have Red Canids.
Oh, yeah.
Strongest player in the world.
The true IRL Zarya. We have Mr. Shrite himself. So this is Red Canids. We know them as the previous, last time we were here. Was it Big Gods or was it... They've had many names to do with
Relics? Was it?
No,
No,
they
it
were
wasn't
never
Relics.
Relics. It was Big Gods, Burning Rage,
Burning
Big
Rage,
Gods.
Big Gods.
Yeah.
All of the logos were red. The flares on their apparel were red. They really like red. And there is Typhex as well. But overall, they seem to feel like they're in a position where they have a bit more confidence. We've talked to them, and they say that their practice has been better for this global than any other before. I think that's fair to say.
Yeah, they straight up admitted that they have a scrim partner. And
Yes.
that doesn't sound like that big of a deal for a lot of people at home. You're like, congratulations, you found somebody to play the video game against. But this is much more important for these people from anybody who's from any territory with only one representative here at Worlds. It just puts it in a position because they all struggle with somebody to get better from. You know, as you put it in the past, iron sharpens iron. And that they finally have something to go, you know, we need you to do this. We need you to punish us more. Maybe, you know, look to draft specific things and test things out with one another. So for the first time, they feel as if they can, you know, start to grow as a group.
We know Typhex, we know Joshrite, we know you know, the three members that have been very constant on their roster. What about Hamtaro and Lethos? I know that Tetra, you're a very big fan of Hamtaro.
Yes. Yes, I am.
In both ways. No, hi. What do you think about how they're going to approach this, and do you think that they can impress here at this tournament?
I think the fact that they've, like you said, with the practice, they've actually got these new players in and they feel they've had enough time to get used to them. Like we said, we spoke to them and they feel good about the lineups.
Yes.
So always solid for them when you feel comfortable with a roster, and that's the first step. If you're in a team, even if all the players have individual skill, if you're not working together and you're not feeling that synergy, you're never going to do it, and Hamtaro is one of the players they feel comfortable with.
They did say, admittedly, because this is basically their first time performing on a stage like this, they're like, we're trying to give him advice on how to deal with the pressure. And it's day one, so if things don't work out the way that they want, it could be a little bit of pressure. We'll see.
Yeah.
Right. And here are our maps. We will be starting things on Sky Temple, and then we go to Warhead Junction afterwards.
The pick by Tempo Storm, they feel very comfortable on it. We're speaking to them just before we came in. They say they've got some stuff.
Quote from Caterpillar. We went from the team that never picked, always banned Warhead, to the team that is only Warhead.
Right.
Well, literally what he said out there before. We are the only Warhead team. And I mean, to be honest, like, Caterpillar likes to make things like short and frank like that. Like, Psalm can only play two heroes. But so it's not an absolutely, he jokes about it. It's not true, but it does show that they have completely changed their scope and Warhead is the focus. And no team I know in the world right now is doing that. And whether that's an advantage or a disadvantage, I guess we'll find out.
I think there might be one team in China.
Yeah, CE did, but they're not here.
Yeah,
so,
unfortunately. But here, yes.
That would have been a matchup. Tempo Storm versus CE, the Battle of Warhead. But instead, we're gonna have that in this series.
All right, well, we are into the draft as we have Uther ban and then Tassadar ban. It's back, boys.
Yay.
Tassadar bans are back.
Who missed it? Hands up.
Go on, Dreadnought, put your hand up. That was
Yeah.
me. He did it. I saw it with my own eyes.
Yeah, the whole week that he managed to vanish. It was a long period, but he, in fact, is back.
Speaking.
I mean, Tempo's already got the Genji. You know that they want to be offensive on a map like Sky Temple with very little objectives, with very heavy focus on small skirmishes. It's a very standard but also powerful opening for them, so I like that. But I think Red Canids also had a proper response picking up the Anub in the mouth.
Very important question. Is the skin that Anubarak is currently running the best skin in the game?
It's only
Pretty
skin.
good.
It's the only skin?
Yeah.
It makes him like 5% better, right?
And in fact, actually, yeah, it just makes you win the video game the minute you load in.
Perfect.
Speaking of winning the video game, Dahaka on this map, always strong, now is just even better as a hero, so good chance we could see him picked up just for the global XP and, of course, for race car ganking potential.
It was last year at BlizzCon that Dahaka started to come into prominence. He had been kind of a good hero for a while, but nobody knew how to use him. And there's Dahaka right there. But Caterpillar told me, he looked at me with this big grin on his face. He said, there's a hero that we're going to pick on basically every map. And I was like, and he's like, it just hasn't been picked yet. And sure enough, they ran it. And since then, and the world has kind of adopted the whole Dahaka thing as we see him, he is picked up. But he's really big on the Haka train months ago, and still good.
I was talking about it with Grubby just like maybe an hour ago, like when Caterpillar kind of busted out that adaptation at BlizzCon, I was like, I've had an epiphany. This is the way you play it.
We watched it, and
great.
the second it was picked, we were like, what is he doing? He's throwing the game, and then it happened.
And then it happened, the second health bar. And little did we know, the third was behind it. We, for a moment, only thought he could have 2 with his passive. No, and in Cattle, you are correct. Cattle, in fact, was the innovator on that. He was the man to break that out and innovate, and it was at a global tournament here. So does Tempo Storm have those tricks up their sleeve now, or do they play standard, walk in confidently? Personally, against Canids, I would like to see them just play, not show a single thing whatsoever, unless they intend to instill fear into their opponents, maybe like the Samuro of Fnatic we saw earlier today.
Because we can assume that Tempo are the favorites here. They are coming into this with a lot to lose, very little to prove, and a lot of points to get themselves to the top of their side of the table.
I do like what Red Canids did by banning out Rhaegar. It shows that they've done some homework, right? So it's kind of the fallback option for June. And you know, I've been tweeting out a lot of statistics this week. He's one of the healthiest Rhaegars. He dies about the least of anybody. Him and Smexy are both up there, but he's far more passive. He plays more backline. He doesn't have that high hero damage that not necessarily high, but he's not as proactive. So now you start to fall back towards Karazim, which June doesn't excel on as much, right? So you've now taken that away. Does that put you into an Ariel situation with a Genji who will be flanked out somewhere else and a Greymane who will be diving in one place? Does that play into it, or do you fall back, especially with the Uther being banned out early?
You can look into the direction, like as Fan was talking about, whenever you have Deathball compositions, they are accented, though Karazim specifically for June is not necessarily the best performing support. It is always going to be good into those heavy Deathballs, so that is at least a positive that could exist here if Tempo Storm falls into the Karazim direction. But the Arthas and the Tychus coming out from Canids here, their draft feels so meta a month and a half ago so far.
Right.
You know what I mean? Just after the Arthas buff, just after the first Anubarak buff.
If we were at mid-season, this would be great.
Conveniently, we are at the mid-season brawl.
Oh, sorry, a Western Clash.
You got him.
You got me.
I'm sorry. that was all I could think of. But you are very correct. Like, if we look at any point throughout Phase 1, or halfway through Phase 1, this is such a meta. And
I mean, there has been moments where the smaller regions have fallen into that trap.
Yeah.
Like in the past, traditionally. And then we have the Karazim coming in, as you were saying, Jayhow, so well deduced.
And I really wonder, Johanna and Muradin are kind of the fallback options for Fury, but going up against the Tychus, you might want to go for those blinds, especially you've got Arthas and Anubarak there that will be on that front line. You have the Iron Skin to get away from that type of heavy CC that could potentially be coming in. Muradin obviously falls into a good realm, but maybe not as safe. And it allows players like Cattle and Psalm to make the plays on the other heroes.
Last choice. What are we thinking for Red Canids? Because they technically have their support, and you can happily go and solo Anubarak if you really want.
I'm afraid it's going to be a false set.
That's a Shrite fallback.
I really don't want it to be.
Yeah?
Just the false set play of Red Canids, even though when we spoke to them, they said that they think their strength is macro play. Every time I saw them on a false set, especially if it was not Jay Shrite, it wasn't that the micro play wasn't there, but the coordination was very, very different. Jay Shrite can apply a reasonable amount of pressure with the global, but the minute it became anybody else when it comes to getting a kill in the focus target, it always seemed like the stun would hit one person, but false set was onto another, and it did draw some concern. But conveniently, they move into the Gul'dan, a much safer route for them, a very consistent damage dealer, and thrives against heavy melees. So though it's not a macro map where you expect Gul'dan to come out because it's Sky Temple, it's a perfect composition style that they're facing into.
It's our first Gul'dan that we've seen so far here today. And we've seen a lot of Genji Greymane being prolific in the tournament, to say the least. Tempo Storm does have that available to them. How does the Gul'dan and Tychus actually really fare against the potential from the Greymane and Gul'dan? Sorry, Greymane and Genji. There's so many Gs.
It's like, so how do they fare against it? It's not that it can't survive, especially the Tychus is considered one of the higher, more defensive, backliners that you can possibly have. Gul'dan, on the other hand, not so much. He does have great peel with the Horrify, but you always want to be trying to make that work offensively. So they do they have tools to be able to sustain, but I will say in general right now, Genji Greymane compositions are just, they're above average when it comes to just strength in compositions, but more than anything, it's very punishing. It's so easy to punish with these comps.
Right.
They're very easy. And so just if you play hyper aggressive, I can see this game falling apart very quickly for Canids, but if they do hold it together, the late game Gul'dan could have a huge spike.
Well, this is the part that also brings up another point. So that if you want to be aggressive and then you hit that 10, you have the Horrify. You don't necessarily have the burst blow up damage, but you have in burst in Tychus and in a little bit in Gul'dan. But there's no cleanse or potential cleanse until 16.
You have that ability. If Genji and Greymane do go in, if Gul'dan is on point, and we have seen it from teams against the Genji, if Gul'dan's on point, then he can shut them down completely. The question is if he's able to, and the fact that he does kill his own health to get mana back, and the whole point of Greymane is he's a finisher.
Yeah. All right, gentlemen, well, predictions before we start things off, Pecha?
I am going to lean towards Tempo Storm because Genji.
It's fair.
Tempo Storm, just because it's like, I assume them to be the better team, and you know, this draft doesn't yell one way or the other.
Global, Genji, Greymane, they have more Gs than the other team, so I'm going with Tempo Storm.
Okay, let's find out who the true Gs truly are here with Tempo Storm and Red Canids. Of course, let's check in as well with the predictions. Red Canids.
Oh,
My
hello,
goodness.
chat.
Not even, it's really interesting to see that. You know, even right after a North American victory over Korea, and it's still, no faith.
Yeah.
Huh.
They're going to turn it around in your anticipations. We'll see. We shall see. For now, though, we're going to head over to the commentary team in Gilly and Trixler, who are going to bring us Tempo Storm versus Red Canids.
Thank you, Caleris. Hey, friends, Gilly and Trixler here, Tricky Weed, to bring you Red Canids versus Tempo Storm. Really important match for both of these teams. As we talked to the teams, both expressed their desire to rack up points in this match. They felt these are going to be some of the easier opponents to be able to get those crucial points in.
Which makes it incredibly exciting. Both these teams thinking they're walking away with an easy victory. Hopefully not, so as they got a brawl out here. Tempo Storm on the left, Psalm will be playing Genji, Caterpillar on Dahaka, Kathan will be on Greymane, June on Karazim, and Fury will be playing Johanna.
And their opponents in the red themselves are the Red Canids, with Vieira playing Malfurion, Hamtaro playing his Anubarak, Typhex playing Arthas, Jay Shritte playing Tychus, and finally Lethosaurus playing Gul'dan.
Excited to see how the Red Canids play here. They were mentioning that, okay, we have two new people on our roster, which has equaled out to new problems and new solutions. And they're going against Tempo Storm, who is a very experienced roster that has been together for a long time. Experience on paper should beat out the team from Latin America, but with Typhex here, being the shot caller, they're looking for aggressive plays.
They are indeed starting to put that aggression on in the mid lane, seeing the 4-man of Tempo Storm go to the bot lane, something that Red Canids themselves have been known to do from time to time playing. And I just want to highlight, as we get things going, how many comfort picks both sides got in their lineups.
True.
Tempo Storm, yes, they got June back on Karazim. They have their Dahaka. Genji, we've seen them or heard them wanting to play that too for Psalm. And of course, Greymane, who has been a staple for them in part 2. But Red Canids, getting the combo of Arthas and Anubarak is huge for them. Watch Hamtaro's Anubarak. It is amazing. It's so much fun to watch. And then you still have Tychus, Gul'dan, and Malfurion. And as the panel brought out, Malfurion having Twilight Dream and Horrify versus this dive will be crucial in being able to sustain through it.
And it's very important here for Latin America to get heroes they're comfortable with, especially with them having the new players on their roster. I'm going to keep an eye on Letho in particular here. I want to see how he plays. Now, Jay Shritte moving in for some auto attacks, bringing out the damages. We're going to have some fights over the Watchtower here as the temples begin to activate. Now, really it's going to be coming down to Fury and his movement and holding down that area, but Red Canids are playing pretty darn aggressive as Typhex steps forward.
Both teams feel like they are able to take the fight at the mid-tempo versus one team just trying to trade things out, but as I say that, we have Greymane starting to go to the top. So Cotton will hold on to this top temple, and being willing to keep Dahaka split soaking and soaking potentially 2 lanes. We'll see if Cattle continues to dual soak and move back and forth between the lanes and just try to get ahead into the later game, get past that early game as quickly as they can, get to those big heroic abilities.
Yeah, so far Tempo Storm has done well. Dahaka is pushing the bottom, denies a few minions of experience and can deny some more here as Dahaka is heading down, and Tychus, Jayshrid will have to move down to defend that area. And they've also earned a few more shots overall. The slight advantage is actually very noticeable. It's very little overall on the top, but it's 2 turrets being being killed in the bottom right corner, which is pretty darn important here for Tempo Storm.
Yes, especially as you get to the next tempo phase. You'll have that distinct advantage of not having to try to fight over so many of the shots, can even possibly come in later on or be less aggressive and let Dahaka in the top lane push with bruisers potentially. So now Tempo Storm make a quick rotation to their Giant so they can start to keep the pressure on there or force a rotation from Red Canids so they can get positioned with their own bruisers.
Yeah, well, so far the macro game has been much better here for Red Canids compared to what we saw last time at the Western Clash. By this moment, I started seeing them fall behind, and they really seem to be panicking a little bit overall in terms of control. Right now, they look very poised for greatness. They already grabbed the Mercenaries on the right side a bit early, but this allows for them to put pressure on the top lane and force Dahaka to move into that area, and they can go in for an invade. However, Tempo Storm did a great job of reacting to the Mercenaries in the top right corner. They grabbed their Giants in the bottom left, so no invade would be possible. So far, Tempo Storm reading really well here.
Yeah, and as long as they can keep that top lane pushed as much as they can let Dahaka push with them as the tempo phase starts. But Red Canids are ready to put the aggression on. That has been a big highlight of Red Canids, is how much aggression they've been able to put on. Even when they were infamous at the Western Clash, they didn't have Vieira, they didn't have their 2 new players, but they still maintain that infamous sort of drive of making sure to keep the aggression on, keep the pressure going at all points.
It reminds me of Synergy, actually. Well, used to be in Europe. They actually played this type of 4-man style of rotating in, bringing in the turrets, getting the pressure down, and keeping up with the early game. Now, Tempo Storm, they have some decent tools for defending. Johanna, in particular, has to be at the front line here. But with Genji not having the greatest wave clear, you've seen them struggling slightly with the pressure that was coming in from Canids. But Tempo Storm, when they do hit level 10, they'll be able to start forcing those engagements to prevent Red here from constantly being aggressive and pushing in. But until then, we still have 2 levels that Red can push in.
And from that one nice push, knowing that Tempo Storm were at the bruisers, Red Canids have not only evened up a lot of the damage that were done to the towers, the gate, in the bottom lane earlier on from Tempo Storm's first phase, but they very nearly took down the well. So at least a nice defense from Tempo Storm to make sure they have that well still. But the time has come for potentially the first big fight as Cattle stalks in.
Yes, this is the breaking point here. Can Tempo Storm go in for an engage? June moves in. Big drag hits on Malfurion. He falls. And suddenly, Tempo Storm are taking massive plays here. Saul moves in and gets a second kill.
2 kills to kick things off for Tempo Storm in the second phase. And with that, they'll be able to capture this temple, putting shots down and taking out the first fort, getting them further ahead in experience. Now Tempo Storm are looking at a comfortable level lead and just hoping that they can get their heroic abilities so they can keep the pressure on.
It really seems like inexperience really hurt them there. Malfurion being down there in the bottom right corner isn't what you typically see when you're going in for a tempo phase, especially against
Dahaka. Yeah.
Yes. You want to have your bruiser or your front line sitting around that area so they can actually handle that choke if it comes in. So Malfurion being way overextended, Tempo Storm, with the experience and the knowledge of the game, just move in as quickly as possible. And they easily get 2 kills, which has put them so far ahead right now. Now, having hero powers here at level 10, they're moving straight in for the boss, and Red Canids has to come in and deal with it.
They're keeping an eye on it. They obviously have scouting drones. Here is a stalk from Dahaka right into the bushes, and that scares away Malfurion enough. So Red Canids, yeah, making the adaptations necessary, making sure that they don't let the fact that they have gotten behind in this game put them completely down and out. Yes, they lose a boss, but they didn't lose more kills. They're not allowing a further snowball at this point.
And I like Cattle's Burrow in there. That secures the boss no matter what. The moment you commit all 5 members there right before 10 even hits, glad I am forced to give it away, and that boss will be pushing the bottom while Gul'dan does his best to defend. Now, this is where I'm starting to see some struggles here from the Latin American team. They're not sure how they want to handle the pressure coming their way, and they're also afraid of losing the fort in the middle. At this point, with the fort being less than a quarter health here, it might be worth it to get rid of this fort and push down and defend your keep, because the keep is actually going to lose out on the wall in the bottom right corner. So that means if another fight gets obliterated here by Tempo Storm, they can move in for aggressive plays and get catapults pushing in that bottom lane.
Yeah, Red Canids definitely do not want that, but keeping Tempo Storm and Majority in the middle for a while maybe slowed things down. Red Canids just needs to look to try to catch back up in experience. They're making sure that they push back wherever Tempo Storm goes after them. And it's really just a waiting game at this point. This has been kind of the standard, oh, that party bush made me scared. But nice thing to note, though, is next boss phase. It's a whole different story for Red Canids. Right now, they have Cocoon. They have Arthas to stand on the point with Army of the Dead. They have Odin for the Siege and Horrify, Twilight Dream. Horrify especially to get people off the point.
Yeah, they have tools to deal with Tempo Storm, but just looking at the mini-map and their movement, they seem almost lost in terms of how they want to handle the pressure of Tempo Storm. Now, Tempo Storm is a team that when they get in cruise control, they usually walk away with the game. That's what they're pretty much known for. And right now, they look like they're in cruise control. They're setting up well around the battleground. They're making sure that they're in certain bushes to make sure no ganks come their way. And as long as they don't take a disadvantaged fight, they should be in a good spot. They're all about being optimal to the point where it almost seems like they never make flashy plays. But that's why they're good.
Yeah, they are consistently strong. Red Canids now are faced with a difficult decision. They can't simply trade, although they are looking at it. They are at least pushing along with the towers, or the temples, so that they can get more of the shots going on other lanes as quickly as they can. But in not trying to go for a fight here, Tempo Storm has gotten 13. And so for this trade for now, it's still going to put the structures in favor of Tempo Storm. That's always such a nice place to be on Sky Temple, where the objective attacks the structures directly.
Especially when they're already getting keep wall damage. They're in the middle, as well as the bottom already being opened up a little bit. Tempo Storm will happily take this trade with Dahaka, playing as safe as possible in the bottom left, while multiple members for Tempo Storm are on the top right corner, moving in for an invade. And at any point, Dahaka can come in for this rotation. They can keep this pressure here with a level 13 talent advantage and push in for the keep wall. Tempo Storm is playing this so methodically and so well that it seems like LATAM has no response.
And this is the best battleground for Red Canids too, but not out of it just yet. Always the time for a big engagement to swing things around. There's only one fort remaining for Tempo Storm. That's some potential experience to be gained. And Tempo are not so far ahead. They've been mostly sticking together. They haven't snowballed it too much with a lot of kills. They've only got 2. That Red Canids have time to try to find that perfect fight.
Yes, they definitely need to find a fight, but so far, Fury in particular has been doing a great job of anchoring for his team. Sitting in a bush on the side, sitting in for a rotation, a flank that could come their way. At that moment, Tyfix is moving in for an aggressive Arthas flank, and if he got on Greymane or Genji, there could have been a spot there where members started to fall, but because of Fury's positioning, they're in a great spot to continue being defensive against Latin America. I mean, look at them right now. They have been nowhere near them at any point to where a fight can even break out. And it's looking like there's some confusion. What do we do here? Do we push in the top left? Do we take out the forward? Do we come in for a fight? A decision needs to be made right now, or Tempo Storm can continue, keep soaking, and move towards 16.
Love that move from Tempo Storm to siege at a keep, because it pulled Red Canids off of their structures. They got Dahaka up in the top 2 to potentially deny some backs, or at least check and see what was going on better. They did eventually back off, though, because they know that this is a time that Red Canids wants and needs a fight.
Coffin with the God-tier cocktail, demounting 3 people and stopping the push from coming their way. Fury has eyes on this, is aware of his opponents, even dropping in the Raspberry Art. Beautiful spray paint right there. And Dahaka, look at him in the top lane, pushing in. Remember, that keep wall was already burned down. Suddenly, keep damage is very possible here for Tempo Storm. They're in such a great spot. I need something from LATAM. I need them to get super aggressive here, or even start posturing around a boss. Say, hey, we might take this boss if you don't come fight us. Bait a fight in and maybe go for that engage.
The difficult point is that Tempo Storm is simply 16, so now they have this big spike. Looking at what they have, they are going to have elongated tongue to go along with feeding frenzy, so a lot of drags and a lot of range on that drag now. Full swift strike build for Genji too, fully relying on that ability to get resets, as well as have the cooldown reduced of that 2 at 13. Red Canids realize that it's time to start making the risky plays. They are going to try to posture around this temple, this Soul Temple. All the while, Cattle is soaking in bot. Do we see him stock up is the question. There's a couple of juicy targets hanging around that bush. Jay Shrita, Letho especially too.
Yeah, with the Nubek sitting in the front and Tyfix starting to move forward, this is the time to come in for a burrow stock. Here he comes, actually. Cattle moves in, the root comes out instantly. We're going to have the Horrify going out, but not connecting. Cocoon in use, and Tempo Storm is moving in. Look at their health bars. They're ready to get kills. There goes the Malfury, and Tyfix low as well.
Cattle gets low too, so does Cawthon. Cattle's used his burrow now, as well as adaptation. So they're going to have to be content with the 1 kill they got on Malfurion, but nevertheless, it was 1. And yes, the Horrify not hitting was a game changer for that fight for Red Canids. It already was a difficult fight because they didn't have 16. But Malfurion not getting to use Twilight Dream either. He is out for 10 more seconds. This is just further more and more dominance now for Tempo Storm.
Tempo Storm in full control at the moment. All it took for them to win that tempo was to get 1 singular kill, and they're in a great spot due to it. Now, Red Canids do move in. They want to try and grab a couple of shots if possible, but with Genji moving forward, Psalm on the back right side. He's ready for a fight now. Do be careful. Malfurion's coming in for a rotation, and Psalm, aware of the timers, gets out just in time, but buys space for his team to finish out the temple.
It was a really great impale from Hamtaro. That's one of the things that I love about him is on his Ragnaros and his Anubarak especially, he knows exactly what needs to be done for his team at all times, and being able to stop the further aggression from Tempo Storm, going to join Assam, and especially stopping the drag possibilities from Cattle 2 is everything for Red Canids, not losing the fight there. But now, Tempo Storm so close to taking down the first keep of the game, opening up a pathway to the core.
Now, there is that spark of good news here. You mentioned they keep getting low, but it hasn't been taken away yet. And with Red Canids about to hit level 16, they can move in for an aggressive fight and be on even talent tiers for almost the first time in this game, it seems like, because they've been behind the entire time, just slowly trudging through the dirt in the macro play of Tempo Storm. Now, will they try to open up the opportunity? There's a couple ways to do this. Go in for a flank, get aggressive on the battleground, or start baiting that boss, which is the riskier of the moves, but it could be okay here. With Odin being available, you can start to get your poke in and force your opponents to come into your way.
So in NA, generally, we see the boss happen, where if you're the team that's behind in structurally, if you're the team that's behind in levels, when you catch up to the talent tier, that's when you go for the boss. Tempo Storm are aware of this. They've got eyes on this entire time, knowing that this is the big point for Red Canids to try to make a comeback. As long as there's no temples up, they might as well just keep their eyes on there while also trying to get whatever mercenary camps they can. Cattle's been checking, but knows Red Canids are just as eager for a fight.
Cattle moves in. We're going to have a gauge here from our new Barak. Does he connect anything? No. Doesn't even get his cocoon, but trying to threaten his opponents. Now, also, be aware, in the top right corner is still that mercenary camp pushing in. It should get a little bit of damage, but will be cleared up relatively soon. And Red Canids, they're clearing out the bottom, but now is the time to make a play. I keep saying it over and over here, but it's getting more stressful and more stressful. With two temples activating and Dahaka being on the battleground, you need to win a fight right now.
Yeah, there is no room for swapping
no more wiggling
the temples. No, you need to find a fight, and they understand this. They're hoping to catch one with a flank from Hamtaro, but pulling Red Canids down gives Dahaka so many shots on that top temple, absolutely for free. Tempo Storm is playing this with their global so impeccably well.
And remember, all the keep walls being cleared earlier, if that entire temple is grabbing the top, that's two keeps there and maybe some more damage on the third keep. Finally, Latin America makes the play. All right, Tempo Storm, we're ready to fight. Do you want to come out and play? Fury on the right side dancing spectacularly here. Now, do remember, Iron Skin, very important for whenever that boss finishes up.
Look at Genji. They're not going to do this. They're not going to do anything about this. They are perfectly fine with just defending versus this push. Odin was used for that, but two keeps are down. And with Genji's help and Dahaka, Tempo Storm running this map around, it all comes down to the defense here, but they're just about to 22.
That's the scary part. Defense and 20 with a keep being up. They still have a keep wall. This is definitely defendable here for Tempo Storm. And Latin America has made their call. Nubrex in the bottom helping out with the engage. And they're going to try and push and get what they can here. A full fight would be scary, and Tempo Storm is aware of that. Fury moves in with the condemn, grabbing Typhix here on the left side. He's low on health. Cattle helping out in the engage as well.
Horrify was great. Twilight Dream hit a couple. The engage was trying to come in before Anubarak got to the team, and he will get here, but at what cost? Because so many of the members of Red Canids are low. But miraculously, so far, they have survived. There's no Blessed Shield left. There's only Palm left. There will be Cursed Bullet in a few, but finally, Tempo Storm gets the opening they're looking for in this fight. They take down one. They're looking for another one. Cattle's there, used Apex Predator to get back in. Slight ice block from Vieira. This looks like it could be the end if Tempo Storm can get any more kills.
Ooh, unable to do so somehow. We're going to see them out Fury and walk away from the fight. The story of the game, though, is the boss did push in the bottom left and kill out the keep. Now, this should be getting cleared up, but there is possibility for Latin America to actually get the first damage on a core, so not too shabby, but Tempo Storm finally defends and also grabs the rest of the temple in the far south of the battleground. And overall, if you look at the macro of the map, middle and top lane are pushing in. Defendable, because there is a Gul'dan available for the Red Canids, but can they actually get into a spot where they can get a couple of kills and then go for an aggressive push in the bottom? They do have a win condition now. It's all about getting the 20 and surviving until then.
I like seeing that final cut be used to try to help with the team's wave clear a little bit. It was a calculated risk that Tempo took, right? Like
yeah.
they knew if they could get enough kills, they could end the game there. They were willing to take that calculated risk. Yeah, they lost some core health, definitely, and it may come back to bite them, but who knows? We'll have to see.
We'll have to see here, but so far it's looking good for Tempo Storm, keeping up with the cruise control strat, if you will. I'm going to go ahead and call it that, as they continue to just play where they're just slowing down the game enough, but making sure not to provide any plays for their opponents with multiple members in the top lane. Latin America looking for maybe a potential pick on Cattle, but he's staying in that bush, ready to zoom away if need be.
One thing that has really impressed me of Tempo Storm's development over Part 2 specifically is an issue for them that has plagued them for a long time in the past was their solo laners getting caught. And they have all dropped their time dead, except June, but he knows that he was playing some more Karazim and the like. But everyone else has dropped down their time dead significantly over Part 2. So they all have understood that that's been a problem. And we talked to Cattle early on, and he said, we're just not letting ourselves make the same mistakes we made before. At this point, though, we've seen them try to keep in mercenary camps in all of the lanes, but RED Canids are now starting to come back somewhat, right? Like, they are about to get 20. Yes, they still have 2 keeps down, but they only need one good fight once they get 20.
That's a good point. I mean, passively, Tempo Storm has allowed for the RED Canids to come back here 2-3 levels almost just by soaking passively in the middle and the top lane. Now, granted, they made an aggressive play in the bottom and left and got a keep, which did award them some experience as well, but now your opponent is on even footing right now. Let's see what we're going to get they pick up for level 20. It's going to be Haunt here, 4 gold Dan. So now if we get in a massive Horrify that does connect, there is a possibility that RED Canids can go ahead and take this entire engagement and force a fight and actually move into the bottom left and get a win here. Tempo Storm can't play as passively anymore.
And Malfurion becomes a whole different beast once he gets Bolt with Twilight Dream.
Look at the mini-map here, Gilly, on the bottom right. Both Genji and Dahaka are circling around this entire fight, realizing that the RED Canids are staying in a spot where they're staying next to each other, which allows for them to do these small maneuvers and get core damage.
Yeah, these two have so much different ways of mobility. You saw immediately a stock out, and Genji leaves. Now all of a sudden, they're here at the temple. They get 1 kill, Malfurion's down, Cattle shows up, gets a drag, that's a 2nd kill. And Tempo Storm finally find their opening.
Checkmate right there. Tempo Storm found a small moment where they could pull a couple people back to help them defend the core, and they go in for the kills. The core continues to fall now, dropping down from the Sky Temple shots. We're going to go ahead and have the core finally dropping all the way down. Could this be game for Tempo Storm? The answer is going to be yes. Tempo Storm gains the first victory of the game, just playing it nice and slow.
6 kills to 0, only 6 kills in the entire game. Tempo Storm, patient, as you said, ever watchful, despite having such an aggressive comp. But when they needed to turn on the aggression there at the end, they did. And I loved that move of sending Genji and Dahaka to the core. And that was the 2nd time they did that, right? They also did that when they knew RED Canids were taking the boss.
Yeah, slow rotation overall, just finally breaking their opponents apart. And you can really tell the inexperience there for the Latin American team. They just really never had a moment where they went in for an aggressive play, tried to push down their opponent. There comes a point, especially when you're getting beat down that far, that you have to go for a high-risk, high-reward strat. And I actually wouldn't mind to see something in the bottom left corner, because they did hold on in the game and got the keep overall, but at some point you got to go for something, and it never really came to fruition, and that allowed Tempo Storm just to play the game they want. You need to mess with them a little bit. Don't let them sit in that cruise control fashion that we saw the entire time.
Well, that closes out game 1. It goes to Tempo Storm. Let's hear what our analyst panel has to think.
That's right. Strong showing from Tempo Storm to start things off. It feels like Tempo Storm had a good level of patience in that game as well. For example, scouting out that 2nd boss, realizing it was happening, realizing they could take advantages elsewhere.
They had a slower tone across the board, it felt like, with the play of Tempo Storm in a lot of positions. But the one thing for me is that enough, right? Like, they were dominant the whole game. They had control, at least, of the whole game. But we were talking about, we see that time and time again out of Tempo. They're playing what we knew from them, and this is supposed to be one of the best renditions, yes, but that missing something, didn't feel it in that game. I'm hoping the next one, I would see it, because when you see a Genji Greymane, I expect battles, right? Like, just aggressive, diving in, and the entire time it just failed to achieve.
One of the things that you said sometime last year in one of our conversations was a matter of, it's not, you said you would go into scrims and you would challenge yourself. We don't want to just win, right? We want to go out and we want to show why we are as good. You need to push through yourself. You need to push your limits. And it just goes to what you just said, is that with that composition and with what they know, are you satisfied with that? Yeah, you got to win and it was easy.
Yeah.
But are you satisfied with that? And, you know, they'll obviously be challenged going forward.
Right.
But I don't know. It looked good. Is that us nitpicking?
It just didn't have the oomph.
Yeah.
You know, I think the difference is because Tempo was the only North American team before this, especially from the players, that seemed to be given a lot of credit for North America, to where you see that. But then we watched Roll20 outperform themselves, you know, just have an amazing performance up against MVP Black. Right. And then we see this here from Tempo, the one you would project to be that level up, and you saw a composition that really could have some pizzazz. And it was just, you know, like, the dud of a firecracker, really.
Like,
Dang it! Gotta go get another roll.
I mean, at the beginning of all of that, I said that, Genji Greymane,
Yeah.
or I theorized Genji Greymane going up against ranged. It's hard for the ranged, right? But do they have to play it a little bit slow because it is Gul'dan? Because if they do go onto him and then they horrify, that causes huge problems for them, Tetra.
I mean, it did happen once where, like, the one fight they nearly lost where Gul'dan actually got a 5-man horrify. Unfortunately, the one person who actually ran into Canids was Johanna, so they weren't able to capitalize on it.
Right. All right. Well, of course, make sure to continue voting in the chat as to whether or not you think that Tempo Storm or Red Canids is going to be victorious. Our next map coming up was going to be
Warhead Junction.